The United States had some peculiar laws in the 1970s. Consider taking your pet for a stroll while they're not wearing a diaper or attempting to roller skate in a public restroom, both of which are obviously taboo. The introduction of hot pants was this year's big fashion story. Additionally, you might be breaking the law if you decided to unwind in a bathtub without making sure it had legs. Furthermore, it is illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your pocket or cruise in a black car on Sundays. Additionally, you should not play pinball if you are younger than 18. For the first time ever, you are going to see a child try to play pinball with his feet. Are you prepared, mister? Proceed. These peculiar laws had everyone scratching their heads, whether they were frowning at police, slurping soup, wearing hot pants, or flirting with flags. Therefore, if you were alive in the 1970s, you had better be on the lookout for these 20 strange and illegal things. Number 1. Walking a dog without a diaper. There were some cities that made it illegal to walk your dog without wearing a diaper on your dog. It was anticipated that dogs would wear diapers with the purpose of preventing any unanticipated accidents that might occur on public streets. At the same time that this peculiar law made an effort to keep cities clean, it caused pet owners to laugh a lot and scratch their heads when they thought about it. Due to the fact that owners were so eager to comply with this peculiar rule, the meaning of dog fashion underwent a complete transformation. Despite the fact that, thankfully, this law was eventually forgotten, along with disco balls and bell-bottoms, it is still an odd relic from the past of laws pertaining to the ownership of pets. Number 2. Wearing roller skates in public restrooms. When it comes to public restrooms, it is actually against the law to wear roller skates under certain circumstances. In the end, it all came down to safety concerns because of the potential for disaster that could be caused by crowded restrooms, slick floors, and people zipping around on wheels. Roller skating was prohibited in these restricted areas by the authorities because they were concerned about the possibility of accidents and injuries. Although this law may have slowed down the trend of roller disco, it did make bathroom breaks a little less chaotic than they would have been otherwise. Number 3. Installing bathtubs without legs. It is possible that the fact that installing bathtubs without legs was prohibited in certain regions will come as a surprise to you. For the purpose of preventing bathtubs from being placed directly on the ground, this regulation was put into place. Legs improved ventilation beneath the tub and prevented moisture accumulation, which could have produced mold growth and other unhygienic conditions. Legs also prevented the accumulation of moisture. These issues were given serious consideration by legislators back then, despite the fact that it seems strange to think about now. If they did not make certain that their bathtubs were in compliance with this requirement, homeowners ran the risk of breaking the law. Number 4. Driving a black car on Sundays. The act of driving a black car on a Sunday was considered to be a criminal offense in certain locations. This peculiar prohibition was founded on the idea that automobiles, particularly black ones, disrupted the typical day of rest that people were supposed to do. Because Sundays were considered to be holy days that should be spent in prayer and rest, the sight of cars driving at high speeds was considered to be in direct opposition to this ideal. There is a possibility that the decision to crack down on black cars was made due to the increased visibility of black cars, or because of the associations that black cars have with extravagance and luxury. Number 5. Ice cream cones in your pocket. During the 1970s, a few states had some peculiar laws that prohibited people from carrying ice cream cones in their back pockets. These laws were in effect in a few states. It is said that in rural areas, naughty people would sneak around town with ice cream cones in their pockets in the hope that horses would be drawn to the sweet treat and follow them home. This kind of behavior is said to have occurred in the past. It is not known how frequently this law was implemented, but it certainly adds a new and interesting dimension to the peculiarities that were present in the legislation of the 1970s. Number 6. Singing in a swimsuit. During the 1970s in the United States of America, there were specific locations where singing while wearing a swimsuit could get you into a lot of trouble. In certain locations, there were laws that made it illegal to sing along while being dressed in beachwear. Despite the fact that this prohibition was justified for a number of different reasons, the need to maintain decorum in public areas was frequently the driving force behind it. Some authorities believe that singing while wearing a swimsuit is impolite and contributes to the disruption of the tranquility that exists in public places. Number 7. Playing pinball if you're under 18. While pinball was a popular pastime in the 1970s, not everyone was able to enjoy themselves to the fullest. Under certain circumstances, it was against the law for individuals who were younger than 18 years old to take part in this particular arcade pastime. Pinball, with its flashing lights and fast-paced action, was considered by the authorities to have the potential to divert children's attention away from activities that were more beneficial to their health. Just for a moment, put yourself in the position of a young person who was desperate to earn points on the pinball machine, only to find out that doing so would be technically illegal. Number 8. Wearing skimpy clothes in public parks. There are some parks in which it is against the law to wear clothing that is too revealing. Hot pants, which were extremely short shorts that were all the rage during that time period, were regarded as being too exposed in certain public places. This was the case. The authorities in certain regions held the opinion that these skimpy bottoms went too far, and as a result, they passed laws that prohibited the public display of these bottoms. Number 9. Spitting on the sidewalk. Spitting on the sidewalk was considered to be more than just a matter of poor manners in many cities because it was against the law. This stringent stance against spitting was instituted due to concerns regarding public health, particularly in light of the fact that tuberculosis and other diseases were still prevalent. The authorities were concerned that spitting could spread bacteria and other harmful germs, so they enacted ordinances to discourage people from doing so. Number 10. Flirting with flags. When it came to flirting in the funky 1970s, there were specific guidelines to follow. In certain communities, the use of flags as a means of flirting was considered to be inappropriate. There were laws in place in certain locations that made it illegal to send romantic signals using flags. This prohibition was most likely prompted by concerns regarding the possibility of misunderstandings and matters of public etiquette. Number 11. Frowning at police officers. In certain regions during the 1970s, it was actually against the law to make fun of law enforcement officers. The act of frowning at law enforcement officers was considered impolite in certain locations, and as a result, it was against the law. The enforcement of this law was a manifestation of a larger cultural emphasis on maintaining law and order, demonstrating respect for those in positions of authority, and encouraging positive behavior toward law enforcement. Number 12. Pigeon feeding. Pigeon feeding was a practice that was prohibited in many cities, despite the fact that it might appear to be harmless. The authorities were concerned about the increasing total number of pigeons, as well as the mess that they left behind. It was common knowledge that pigeons would congregate in areas where food was readily available, which would exacerbate hygiene problems and pose a threat to people's health. Number 13. Leaping off buildings. Leaping off a building was forbidden in New York in the 1970s. The reason this law, which is still in effect today, was probably put in place to protect people from harm and to stop irresponsible actions that might put people below, as well as the jumper, in danger. Number 14. Slurping soup. It was actually illegal in some areas of New Jersey to slurp soup. Taking a loud swig could get you into trouble. This unusual rule was justified by the need to preserve social norms and decorum during mealtimes. Number 15. Connecting to the internet without permission. Although the internet was still in its infancy in the 1970s, it may be illegal to connect to it without authorization. Future cybersecurity and digital regulations were established by making unauthorized access to network services a serious offense. Number 16. Dogs that bark. In some cities in the 1970s, it was against the law for dogs to bark after 6 p.m. The regulation of canine chatter was implemented to preserve tranquility in residential areas. Number 17. Using silly string. In some towns in the 1970s, it was illegal to use silly string. This entertaining party staple was outlawed because of the mess it made and the possibility of vandalism. Number 18. Hanging obstructions from the rearview mirror. Anything that could obstruct the driver's view could not be hung from the rearview mirror. The purpose of this law was to increase road safety by guaranteeing that drivers could see the traffic up ahead clearly and unhindered. Number 19. Painting polka dots on the American flag. Any modification to the American flag was considered a grave offense, as patriotism was of utmost importance. It was legally forbidden to paint polka dots or make any other alterations to the flag in order to preserve its honor and importance. Number 20. Sitting on your porch with a couch. In some college towns in the 1970s, it was illegal to have upholstered furniture, including couches, outdoors. The purpose of this regulation was to mitigate fire hazards, specifically in areas where student housing is common.